Most people imagine that they will leave this world the same way they walked through it, side by side with the person they love. Two coffee cups on the table, two sets of footsteps down the hallway, someone on the other side of the bed, breathing quietly in the dark. Very few of us picture the morning when one half of that picture is suddenly gone, and the house feels too big for a single heartbeat. This is where Harold found himself at 84 years old. For 53 years, he had shared an ordinary, faithful life with his wife, Lillian. They were not famous, not wealthy, not remarkable by the world's standards, but their days were stitched together with small rituals that meant everything to them. Evening tea at the kitchen table, slow walks to the mailbox, the way she rested her hand on his arm when they crossed the street. When she died, it wasn't just a person who disappeared. It was a whole pattern of living. In the first days after the funeral, people came and went in waves. Flowers, casseroles, sympathetic looks, the same phrases repeated over and over. She's in a better place. At least she's not suffering. Everyone meant well, but when the last car pulled away and the door clicked shut, none of those words could fill the empty chair at the table. The silence in the house settled around Harold like dust. What happened next is something many older men and women quietly fall into when they lose a spouse. No one hands you a manual for grief. No one tells you what to avoid. You are hurting, and you do the best you can. But looking back, there were things Harold wished someone had whispered into his ear on those first long nights. Things you should not do when your spouse passes first. The first thing Harold did, almost without thinking, was to pull away from everyone. The phone rang, and he let it ring. Neighbors knocked, and he stayed perfectly still in his chair until they went away. His daughter sent messages asking if she could stop by, and he answered with short excuses. Maybe another day. I'm tired. I'm fine. He told himself he was protecting his heart, guarding his pain from people who couldn't possibly understand it. In reality, he was locking himself in a small, airless room with his grief. Days blurred together. He left the television on, not to watch, but to drown out the quiet. Meals went half-eaten or untouched. Letters piled up on the table. Hours passed without him speaking a single word out loud. Isolation felt safe at first, but slowly it became heavy, like a blanket that was too warm to breathe under. This is the first thing many grieving spouses do. They shut the world out. It makes sense. When everything hurts, every invitation feels like too much effort. But grief, fed by silence, grows sharper, not softer. We are not built to heal in complete solitude. The second mistake came from the same place of pain, but it wore a different mask. Within a few weeks, Harold decided that maybe the problem was the house itself. Everywhere he looked, there were reminders of her scarf hanging on the back of the chair, her handwriting on a recipe card pinned to the fridge, her slippers neatly tucked under the bed. He told himself that if he could just get away from this place, it might hurt less. So, he began to plan big changes. He pulled down boxes from the attic and started packing up their life. Old photographs, books she loved, the mug she used every morning, chipped on the rim but still her favorite. He thought about selling the house, moving to a smaller apartment, giving away most of their things. On the surface, it sounded brave and practical, a fresh start. Underneath, it was an attempt to outrun memories. Grief has a way of making everything feel urgent. The pain is so loud that you want to do something, anything, to turn the volume down. But major decisions made while your heart is still in shock rarely come from a place of clarity. Harold later realized he had very nearly erased the physical traces of the life they built together because he was afraid to feel. If you find yourself in those early days, wanting to move, to sell, to give everything away, pause. Let the fog thin out a little before you reshape your entire world. You don't have to live in a museum of your past, but you also don't have to burn it down to survive. The third thing Harold did was something quieter, but just as dangerous. He stopped taking care of his body. Routines that had once been automatic simply slipped away. Mornings, he stared at his pills and thought, what does it matter now? Breakfast turned into half a cracker, a sip of coffee, gone cold. Some days he forgot to eat altogether. Sleep came in restless fragments, broken by memories and the shock of reaching out to the other side of the bed and finding only cool sheets. It is common, after losing a spouse, to feel as if your own life's value has been cut in half. The person you were responsible for, the one you cooked for, worried for, prayed for, is gone. The temptation is to drift, to let go of your own well-being as though it no longer deserves attention. Harold lived like this until his body began to complain. Dizziness, weakness, a fall that left him bruised and shaken on the kitchen floor. Lying there, staring up at the ceiling, he realized something. He wished he had understood sooner. Neglecting his health was not an expression of love or loyalty to his wife. It was a quiet way of giving up on himself and on the people who still needed him. Your heart may be broken, but it is still beating. Those small acts of care, taking your medication, eating real food, going to your appointments, are not just chores. They are statements. I am still here. I am still choosing life, even when it hurts. The fourth mistake Harold made was to pretend, for the sake of others, that he was managing better than he actually was. When people did manage to get through his door, he put on a kind of mask. He cracked jokes. He said he was doing okay, all things considered. He changed the subject when the conversation drifted toward his wife. He was afraid that if he let the dam break in front of someone, he would never be able to pull himself together again. One afternoon, months after the funeral, he stepped into the bedroom to put away some laundry and caught sight of her old cardigan hanging on the back of the door. Without warning, a wave of sorrow rolled through him so strong he had to sit on the edge of the bed. His hands shook. For the first time, he didn't swallow it back down. He let the tears come, messy and unrestrained, until his chest ached and his eyes burned. And when the storm finally passed, something inside felt lighter, if only by a small degree. Grief is not a problem to solve or a task to complete. It is love with nowhere to go. When we insist on acting strong all the time, we are not protecting anyone. We are denying ourselves the honest release our hearts need. There is no shame in saying, I am not okay today. There is no weakness in admitting that the evenings are hard, or that the bed feels too big, or that you still talk to their photograph. Letting someone see your real sorrow does not make you a burden. It allows them to be human with you. The final and perhaps most painful mistake Harold fell into was believing that his story was essentially over. Not in the sense that he wished to die, but in the quieter belief that his meaningful days were behind him. He woke up because the clock said morning had arrived, not because he was looking forward to anything. He moved through the house like a caretaker in a museum, dusting objects that no longer felt connected to a living future. This is a thought that visits many who lose a spouse. My reason is gone. I was part of a pair. Alone, I am just the leftover piece. For a while, Harold lived inside that sentence. But life has a way of tapping gently on the window if we leave even the smallest crack open. A neighbor asked if he might be willing to look at a broken lawn chair. A community group needed someone to help fold newsletters. A child down the street started waving at him from the sidewalk every afternoon. At first, he said no more often than he said yes. But slowly, almost without noticing, he began to respond. He fixed the chair. He folded the newsletters. He waved back at the child. Then one day stepped outside to chat. None of these things erased his grief. They did, however, remind him that there were still threads of connection available to him. Still places where his hands, His time, his stories, mattered. Purpose after loss rarely arrives as a grand revelation. More often, it appears in small invitations, a favor asked, a neighbor in need, a chance to share what you know with someone younger. Your spouse's death does not cancel out the value of what you still carry inside you. If anything, the love you shared can become a quiet fuel for how you live the years that remain. Harold never stopped missing Lillian. He never stopped talking to her in the kitchen when the kettle boiled, or pausing at her photograph on his way out the door. But he stopped isolating. He stopped rushing to erase their life. He began to eat again, to rest, to see his doctor. He allowed himself to cry, and little by little, he allowed small, new reasons to get out of bed in the morning. If you find yourself where Harold once stood, staring at an empty chair, listening to a house that suddenly feels too quiet, know this: there is no right way to grieve, but there are gentle warnings worth hearing. Don't lock yourself away from those who care. Don't rebuild your entire life while your heart is still in pieces. Don't abandon the body that still carries you. Don't pretend you are untouched by loss. And don't decide too soon that your story has nothing left to offer. You loved someone deeply. Love does not end on the day they leave this world. It changes shape. It becomes memory and ache. And, if you let it, it can become a kind of strength. You are still here. You are allowed to hurt. You are also allowed, in your own time and in your own way, to keep living.